All right, let's take a moment and introduce each other. My name is Mark Haevener with the Baptist General Convention of Texas, Office of Intercultural Ministry. So, with that organization, I assist our language and culture based churches from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And so, I work a lot with refugee pastors and churches and helping them be established. And this partnership allows me to connect with the refugee process and agencies. So I'll talk from that perspective today and give you an update as I understand how things are going. But first, let's introduce ourselves and what you hope to get out of this time so I can be specific and as I talk or ramble at times. So let's see who wants to go first, and whoever goes first then chooses someone else on the screen. So whoever goes first gets to set the tone.
Well, I'll jump in there. I'm Lester Merriweather with Literacy Connexus, and I'm just happy that everyone could be here today to learn about refugees in Texas in this particular workshop, but also about what churches can do. I have met Steve before, and Tanem and I work together, and then Wes is my next door neighbor. So I'm just glad that all of you are participating and look forward to getting to know Elle down the road. Oh, and I'll choose my neighbor Wes since he's on the left of my screen.
What else can I say that you didn't already say, Lester? So my name's Wes Young. I'm the executive director of the Tarrant Literacy Coalition. We provide a lot of support services for community and faith-based programs in our community, but we occupy an interesting space where we also exist within the federally funded realm in terms of referrals into programs. So I'm just excited to be here today and learn more. And I'll choose my friend Tanem.
Good morning, everybody. It's still morning, right? Yes. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tanem. I also work with Literacy Connexus, and prior to the pandemic, I was also neighbors with Wes. Not so much anymore because I'm not in the office very often. I am really excited to be here for Literacy Connexus. I'm an ESL associate. I write for our blog, and I do a little editing. And I also teach ESL to adult students with Fort Worth ISD as a teacher facilitator. So it's great to meet you guys. And I will choose, oh, there's two Steves, Steve Woodard.
Yeah, I'm Steve Woodward here in Amarillo, Texas. And I'm the director of Culture Cross Ministries. We work with refugees, a lot of Hispanics. We do have a ministry center here called the Amigo Center. And our primary ministry has been English as a second language. And we hope to offer immigrant legal services in the future. I'll ask Ellie.
Hi, I'm Elle, also from Amarillo, Texas. I'm with Refugee Language Project. I'm our literacy coordinator. So our program is mostly focused on Somali women, many of whom did not have a chance to be literate in their first language. And so we're trying to help them adjust to living in a text-rich culture. And we do that mostly by setting up one-on-one tutoring relationships that we then facilitate with, we used to have 50 people in a room. Now we do small groups for some more formal instruction. Oh, I have to pick someone. I guess Steve Banta hasn't gone yet. You go.
Thanks, Elle. Hi, Mark. It's very nice to meet you. I'm the executive director of Literacy Texas. We do not provide direct services but we are here to support all of the other literacy nonprofits with training like we're going through today, and we put on an annual conference too. I'm very interested in this subject, so thanks for being here. Is there anybody that hasn't gone yet? Matthew?
I'm sorry, I came in late. What was the question?
Just please introduce yourself and what you hope to get out of this session.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, my name's Matthew Johnston. I'm an ESL teacher at Dallas College, and I do some volunteer work in the community in North Dallas. Yeah, I'm just interested to hear more about the refugee situation in Texas.
Well, wonderful. I'm so glad that you all are here. And let me share my screen. I gotta wait for the little bar to go up to start. But just to let you know, I am passionate about refugees. In the work I do with the Baptist Convention, we focus in on, my office focuses in on immigrants and refugees, helping the indigenous pastors from those communities establish their churches in their languages and in their culture. So often they become the center of their refugee community, whether they are Christian, non-Christian. They all the refugees come to the pastor to help for guidance, and they work hand in hand with the agencies that are assisting refugees resettle. For those that are ESL teachers, this is a picture of a workforce ESL class, in which the teacher is helping these refugees from Bhutan or learn to speak English and do a task. So they are working away, trying to keep those balls on the parachute and to be able to talk and receive commands in English. Workforce ESL is something that a lot of refugees need. Often I find that refugees feel that once they get a job that they've accomplished enough English. But the leaders in the community, the pastors, are always asking for more help in developing their communities in their English skills. So workforce ESL is something that a lot of us need, a lot of churches, refugee communities and churches are asking for help. So that's just a little advertisement for you there. Matthew shared a lot about what a refugee is. So an immigrant is someone who voluntarily leaves his or her country of origin to work, study, or live in the U.S. A refugee is a person in flight from a desperate situation. So there's a key difference. An immigrant chooses to leave his or her country of origin. A refugee, on the other hand, is compelled to seek asylum in another country. I've had several calls this week from some of our refugee churches that we've established here in Texas from Central Africa, mostly Congolese, Burundi, Rwandan, and the persecution of different ethnic groups are returning. So they were telling me about their families that had escaped into the mountains 12 years ago and hid themselves. They themselves had ended up crossing the border into other countries and becoming refugees, but these are family members right now that are hiding in mountains. They've been hiding for 12 years. The death squads have found them, and this is things that have happened in the last week and a half. One pastor shared with me pictures of his cousin, or what was left of the hut that he was in, when the death squads came in and burned the village and his cousin alive in that. And it's all because of ethnic differences. Those situations that are happening are the same situations that happened years ago. The people in the government leaders, also share this view that this particular ethnic group needs to be cleansed from their country. So it's a state-sponsored situation in which the government is complicit in the death squad activity. This is different than those that cross the border, the southern border. They are migrants. They may be fleeing for economic reasons or fleeing from gangs, but they're not under persecution from a state-sponsored activity. So refugees are refugees because of the actual government being complicit or actually involved in the persecution. And this is the definition that the United Nations uses and what we have adopted as a country ourselves. A refugee is a person who is unable or unwilling to return to his or her country of origin because of past persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution based on a person's race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. So right now in Burma, because the military has taken over the country from a pathway in which they were heading in democracy, we have young people, young adults who are protesting, and they're being persecuted because they are wanting democracy. Several years ago, there's been a hot war in Burma in which there was a civil war, and we received thousands of refugees from that. Now, again, it's started and it's political. Refugees are starting to come from that. They're not in the pipeline yet, but they are under persecution at this moment. And I can share more about that situation through the eyes of the Burmese that are settled here in a little bit. So the first thing that happens is displacement. Here are some pictures of Bhutanese. So if you know your geography, Bhutan and Nepal are kind of sandwiched between China and India. And it's a small country in which there was an ethnic group originally from Nepal who was pushed out 100 years ago into southern Bhutan. And when they grew to a certain size because they were Hindu and Bhutan is Buddhist, in the 1990s, they were gathered up and forced across the border and back into Nepal. Nepal didn't want them back. Bhutan didn't want them. So this is a picture in which they are sandwiched between two armies in which they were being forced out of their country. And it was a standoff. And eventually Nepal allowed them in and put them in prison camps. There were 7 camps, and they remained in those camps until they were settled somewhere else. And we'll talk more about that process. Matthew kind of shared some of these things. Usually, since 1980s, we've had about 10 million refugees. During World War II, we had about 20 million. As Matthew said, we have 29 million today that meet the UN definition, and about 79.9 million are displaced internally or externally. That's the 29 million is external, internal makes up to 79 million. 50% are in Asia, 20% from Africa, 30% from Middle East and South America. That is mainly from Cuba, but there is some children that meet the refugee definition and are being were settled in the United States. That program has just reopened as of 2 days ago. So we'll be seeing South American children being settled through refugee agencies through special programs. Here, as someone of faith, I get up every morning and I think of Psalm 107, verses 1 through 9. This really helps me every day to remember what God is doing throughout the world. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the adversary. The wording here means that God takes people who are gripped by repressors, opens that hand and gathers those people into his arms, and gathers them from the lands, from the east to the west, from north to the south. So throughout the whole world, God is looking to find people under the hand of repressors and gathers them into his arms to settle them. So the three possibilities for solution is to return to their country, which that's why refugees sometimes are in refugee camps for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and some Central Africans from the time of the genocide in Rwanda and Burundi have been in camps for 30 years. So the first level is to work on trying to return them. So there has to be a political solution. And if that's not possible, then the next step the UN works on is trying to get them to be able to be resettled permanently in the country that they fled to. And if that turns out not to be possible, then resettlement is the only possibility, and that's resettlement to a third country. So like in Burma, the crisis that's happening right now that's going to produce refugees that we'll see probably in 2 to 5 years, because the military government has taken over Burma from the democracy that was laid out in the last 5 years. You have here and through here war between military action from the rebels and then up here as well. Rebels meaning, like in Star Wars, the good guys who are fighting the central government. So those refugees that are coming from this side are escaping into Thailand. The United States and UN are setting up refugee camps here in Thailand for those that are fleeing from that hot war. On the rest of Burma, and where the political demonstrators are escaping, as well as military officers and police officers and their families who are refusing to fight against their people, are escaping through Chin State into India. India, because of their relationship with China, is refusing to set up refugee camps or allow NGOs or UN in. So it's now dependent on the local Baptist associations in India and across the border. And so here in Texas, the 40-some Burmese churches are mobilizing to help set up camps here. So these things, what we talk about refugees, is happening every day. And it's impacting former refugees that have been settled, and they're activated to try and help those back home. So what is happening to refugees in Texas right now? it is those people that have already come as refugees are trying to develop a strong base for their community so that when new refugees can come, they can also be a better partner in helping them be established. So Matthew shared with us the situation with our government that's not favorable right now, or it hasn't been favorable to refugees settling in the numbers that they have in the past. The community of faith from these refugee communities that are already here are working hard to create a more solid foundation so they themselves can be the leaders of helping establish refugees. If anyone has a question, just holler as we move through this. Give you a sense of what a refugee camp looks like. Here are some pictures from some camps in Burma and Bhutan. And you can see that it often is a desperate situation in which there is so many things happening that life is hard. So you see they are receiving food. One of the pastors here told me that when he was a little boy, it was his responsibility to go and get buckets of water from the water truck that came once a week, and he would end up playing too long and miss the water truck and get in trouble for not getting the water for the week. The UN, if it's official UN refugee camp, they get bags of rice once a week. Here are some pictures, and this is all from Burmese camps. You can see here they are guarded, barbed wire to prevent them from leaving these camps. Sometimes, as you can see here, it is children who are greatly impacted by the situation. So if you're living in a refugee camp for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, these children are born there. They know nothing of their homeland. They know nothing other than living in these camps. So mentally and emotionally, children are greatly impacted by this. And so when they're resettled, our school districts, I've heard a few people that are working with children in school districts. It is very important to be advocates for refugee children and to work with and help teachers with that. I've gotten calls many times here in Houston from schools that need help with connecting to the community or help in teaching in connecting and teaching or helping teachers with that process of learning and culture. Steve, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, ask you a question.
Matthew Johnston has a question for you. Which
Okay.
organizations are serving in India to receive Burmese refugees?
Repeat that again. I have some noise here.
Which organizations are serving in India to receive Burmese refugees?
It's primarily right now, it is local Baptist associations. So Indian Baptist associations and Burmese Baptist associations, Burmese Baptist associations that are crossing the border. So it is all local that are working among the people that are being sent there. The Indian government is not allowing organizations to come in. Hopefully that will change with time by the pressure that can be put on by governments that are US, UN, and others. But right now, India is taking the heat from China. China really wants the military government to stay in place because they're supporting it in Burma. China's after the natural resources that are in Burma. The hydro create power, the timber, and minerals. So like components for your cell phone, all kinds of things that can be mined out of Burma. Now here's a little bit different look of refugee camps. This gives you a sense of what a refugee camp looks like in Africa. So you saw what they look like in Asia, but look how desperate things look like in Africa. These camps in Africa last a long time. You can see here the people are penned in like animals, barbed wire, grass huts. So just think of the impact on these people that are there, again, for years and years and years. It's heartbreaking when you see these pictures. To me, and I had in my house a leader from one of the local churches here from Central Africa, from Congo. I was asking him more about his story. And he said to me, Mark, I saw my first massacre when I was 5 years old, when the rebels came into my village and attacked it. I was separated from my family. Someone grabbed me and held on to me as we fled. And I moved from family to family. And one day there was a truck going by with refugees in it. And I saw my grandma and granddad in it. And the people that were taking care of me ran after that truck. And my grandma grabbed me. And it was not until another 5 years later that I was able to, with my grandmom and granddad, go to a third country, secondary country, and there in a refugee camp, I found my parents. But he's joyful. He works with one of the refugee agencies, and Jesus is in his life, and he's joyful to worship. And for those that are Christians, it's amazing to watch and see refugees that have been through amazing things, but they still have held on to something that keeps them going in these drastic situations. And it's often Christianity or the religion of their origin. Just to give you a sense of where refugees are coming from, for 25 years, here in the Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, and countries around, there's been civil war. And they've produced refugees in high number and still creating refugees because of these situations. Give you a sense of the size of Congo. So if you times Texas by 6, that's the size of Congo. And there's 700 miles of paved roads. And I work with people from those countries every day. And I've told you a few stories about that. And I know I'm kind of running slow here, so I'll build up time. When a refugee has been through the vetting process that Matthew shared, they travel to an airport. So they usually are told a day or two ahead of time. They're given a bag about this size to take their personal belongings. An organization called IOM, International Organization of Migration. They come pick up the refugees. They're the ones that pay for the flight to go to the third country that the refugees have been sent to, or being sent to. They are also the organization that the refugees need to repay after they've been here 3 years. Then they start getting a bill that they need to repay for that flight. So imagine a family of 10 coming from the Congo and what they need to do to repay those plane flights. Arrival in the US, the refugee agencies are here to receive them, take them to their apartments, and help set things up. I'm going to go back to Psalm 107, verses 4 through 7. They wandered in the wilderness. They did not find a way to an inhabited city. They were hungry and thirsty. Their soul fainted within them. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. He delivered them out of their distress. He led them also by a straight way to go to an inhabited city. Texas has been the place in which refugees have been resettled in high numbers since the 1980s with the Vietnamese, Cambodian, Lao, and continued to be a city that opens its doors. The imagery here is that in ancient times, cities had walls and there'll be watchmen on the walls. And when people come and approach that city, the watchman will look and see and evaluate and tell the people that are guarding the doors to open or not open the doors. So it is our work, our scriptural work, to be watchmen on the wall, to look and see and open the doors, to be able to relieve the hands of God holding on to the people that have been under the hands of the repressors. So this is something that Texas has been involved in for decades. Refugees are allocated to VOLAGs. Matthew shared there was 9 of those, and they are settled. Here in Houston, we have 5 refugee agencies, and they help with the process. In Texas, it's a public-private partnerships. So as long as the partnership is helping establish, settle the refugees, they're grateful for these partners. So I'm viewed as a mentor for refugee leaders, the pastors. So refugee agencies are willing to work or are able to work with me since I'm viewed as a person who mentors and helps refugee leaders establish and help settle their people. Okay, historically, refugees that come to Texas are about 11 to 18% of that ceiling that the president sets. So historically, between 7,000 to 10,000 refugees are resettled in Texas. So that's the numbers that go back to 5 years ago. And about a third of those are resettled in Houston. So Texas has a capacity to continuously create new jobs, new housing, and new work for refugees to establish themselves here in Texas. Any questions before I move on from that? Just real quick on this picture here. This is Ruth and this is Pastor Badra. They were engaged to each other, but they were separated because of the refugee situation. And this is the night in which Ruth came. And you can see here is her refugee badge. So when they leave their country, they have to wear this until they come to the United States. And that night was very special, in which the women of the Bhutanese community surrounded her, and they lifted off this badge and said to her, "You are no longer this," and embraced her. It is, like I said in that scripture passage, our responsibility. It is the right thing to do to settle refugees. It is our God-given call to settle refugees. This is just details about that for a longer presentation. Usually the government, US government, expects that the refugees will be working and fully employed within 90 to 180 days. Refugee agencies' number one job is job placement. Housing, the apartments in which they're placed, they are supported for 4 months. Cash assistance is case by case need. About $3,000 per person is what they receive in assistance. And case management can last 5 years. So the refugee agencies they need to find the rest of the financial support by public funds or partnerships with churches, with organizations, especially in literacy, that can help in the process of resettlement. So the funds that actually come from the US government is very low. Agencies help with employment, vocational training. You can see all that stuff here. So the capacity to resettle refugees in the numbers that we've done before is still in place in Texas. Before this, as I was preparing for this, I called and talked to one of the refugee agencies here, the director, and he said, everything's in place. I just need the funds and to ramp up my employees, and we can go back to establishing the numbers that we were before. So I was hoping to give you much more information about the update in Texas, but since the ceiling has not been lifted to the number that we can and the monies haven't come through, it's a time in which is very sad that we've keeping the gates closed, and it is so sad. Let's see, I'll check some of the questions here. Okay, Matthew asked, I work with Dallas College. We have grant-funded workforce ESL programs. Are there ways to partner with refugee churches or organizations to help refugees learn English? Yes. I know that refugee agencies offer some ESL, but usually they only have resources to provide about 60 to 80 hours of ESL instructions. So Matthew, yes, that's correct. Let me share with you what churches often do. Refugee churches themselves want ESL partners. They can gather the refugees that need ESL. The pastor can go door to door. The deacons and leaders can go door to door. They just need native speakers to teach ESL, maybe on a Sunday afternoon, or they can set up on a Saturday. The refugee pastors have the capacity to actually get the people there. And all they're asking is for ESL teachers. And Workforce ESL captures a lot of workers for Saturday morning. That is what the process that we usually do. Sunday, the pastors send vans out, tell the people that we're going to talk about community resources, and we'll have Workforce ESL, or citizenship classes after church. And that gathers a lot of people as well. refugee agencies desire deeply to partner with church-based or community-based ESL programs to take them beyond where they are and what they can provide. They can provide space and place, advertisement to the refugee community. So all you need to do there is actually go to the refugee agencies and present yourself that you want to partner, and they will get their caseworkers and introduce you to the communities and get you hooked up. So they have capacity to gather, get the information out. So the more that we can do to partner with refugee agencies, the more funds they can give to help the needs of refugees. There'll be a talk a little bit later from Houston Welcomes Refugees, and they've nailed this process down of being able to gather churches to help supply the needs so that the caseworkers' hands are open and funds are more available to help the needs of refugees. Here in Houston, the community college program has special ESL programs for those that are advancing quickly. The young adults are advancing quickly to be able to move into college. So they have ESL programs as well as programs that are specifically designed for training beyond just factory work. So Matthew, we can talk more about that and connect you to the community college here and the person who works with that. So I'll put my email in the chat box, and Matthew, we can connect. I think we've connected before. Ella, I don't know about other places in Texas, but Amarillo, our industries are really suffering from lower levels of resettlement. That's correct. Often the factories, companies want refugees because they work hard, they are committed to their job, they are industrious, they want to be here, they want to work, they want to survive, they want to be away from the terrible situation. So yes, Amarillo, with all the factories you have there, the meat processing, are hurting greatly. The meat processing plants, we encourage them not to recruit until at least a year after refugees been established here, so that the first year's processes are done, green cards are in their hands, and then they can move if they want to. It is so imperative that the partnerships are there. A lot of our companies here in Houston have chaplains who contact me to connect with refugee pastors. A lot of the companies here in Houston also connect directly to our refugee pastors for help on recruitment of others to come and work in their places. So it is also ways in which we can help is partnering directly with these factories to be of assistance in what their needs are, so churches can connect. Also, literacy factories have asked for ESL programs to be brought into the factory for lunchtime, before or after shift. So approaching the factories that refugees are as literacy programs is also another way to help support that factory, support the development of their workers. So just to give you a little bit more of what you can do. Just quickly looking at, so there's a lot of good things in the chat here. I'll type in my email and you can connect with me. So by the 5th or 6th month, a refugee is responsible to pay for their own rent, learn transportation, how to get back and forth from work. Their children need to be in school. So imagine this, you've grown up in a refugee camp. You might be second or third generation away from the situation that your parents or grandparents were in that produced refugees. You've never been outside this camp. You get in a truck or a bus and you're taken to an airport, put in an aluminum tube that flies in the air like a bird. You land in a city. You've never seen pavement. You've never seen buildings of that size. You've never been in a building with windows, never been in a building with a real door, never been in a building with running water, never seen a toilet. The first night refugees arrive, they huddle and sleep on the floor, often just totally frightened about what situation that they're in. And the agency comes. Usually refugees are settled in apartments of their same culture. Usually the pastor or neighbors come the next day and helps the process of understanding, and also in cultural orientation. And the end of 5 years, refugees are able to become citizens, apply for citizenship. They are also a unique visa in which it's the only visa in which they have the right to work right away when they come, because there's no way to return. They're sponsored by refugee agencies who settle them here. And we have 1 minute left, so I'm going to move on from this and look at the last part of Psalm 107. Psalm 107, verses 8 through 9. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness and for his wonders to the sons of men. For he has satisfied the thirsty soul, and the hungry soul, he has filled them with what is good. So the job of those who God has called to resettle refugees, and I think very clearly God has put his hand on the United States and Texas in particular, to be those who fill those that are refugees with what is good. This is the mandate from the Holy Scriptures, to fill refugees with what is good. And I want to leave it there, and if anyone has some more questions, I'll answer them. So right now, it is hard. My soul is burdened that we're not able to do what we've done for decades. I'm fearful for us. Many of us are of the Christian faith that we've kept our doors closed for so long. So I ask you to pray that our doors and gates will be opened so that refugees can come in and we can fulfill God's mandate to be the people that settle those that were under the hand of the repressor and fill refugees with what is good.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your concern and the way you translate that into action. And we'll take a 10-minute break, but you'll have a couple of choices to take next steps as Mark has challenged us. One program will be church experiences, mobilizing the churches to get involved. And Hannah Quillen, who is on the screen, just wave your hand, is going to be leading that. And the other one would be Indigenous and community partnerships, and local principal, Tesmergan Asmron, will be leading that. So I hope I didn't butcher his name too badly. But Butch Green, would you also raise your hand? Butch and his wife and daughter operate Threads by Nomad and the Off-Ramp. And these are two unique refugee ministries. They're one of our sponsors. I encourage you to get in touch with them and learn ways that you could partner with that organization as they creatively provide ways for refugees to work and express the things that we've heard about this morning, the ways that all of us are uniquely gifted and creative. So take a 10-minute break and we'll see you at the next session. Thank you.
If you need to contact me, you can email me, and I'll be very glad to help connect you to Indigenous refugee churches for partnerships.